Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this online foot and mouth disease investigation training course for East African countries. This course has been organized by the European Commission for the Control of Foot and Mouth Disease. And today's agenda for today's webinar is that we are going to start by a welcoming note from Dr. Thomas Dulu. Dr. Thomas Dulu is working in the OIE sub-regional office. After Thomas's introduction, welcome, we will have introduction on FMD presented by myself, and then I will give the floor to Dr. Nick Lyons to welcome you and also continue with his presentation on introduction to FMD in South Africa. After Nick's presentation, we'll have Melissa's presentation. Melissa Mclaws will talk to us about the reason why an outbreak investigation is important. And then Dr. Daniel Gizo will talk to us about the East African Reference Laboratory Network. After Daniel's presentation, we go on with how to study this course. And then throughout the presentations, we'll have questions and answers. And at the end of all presentations, we'll have the question and answer session. So this webinar will be recorded and will be uploaded on our website so that those who were not able to make it or to attend the webinar will be able to visualize the webinar later, or even those who attended will be able to visualize it.
Dear participants, on behalf of Dr. Wakusama, OIE Sub-Regional Representative for Eastern Africa, I take this opportunity to welcome you all and convey gratitude for your initiative to enroll to the online foot and mouth disease investigation training course for East African countries. Foot and mouth disease is a serious viral disease that spreads rapidly and affects mainly cattle, but goats, sheep, pigs, and other cloven-hoofed animals, including wildlife, can also get the disease. The FMD virus is found in all body fluids such as saliva, urine, feces, milk, and in the air that is breathed out by all diseased animals. Persons wearing unclean clothing, shoes, hands, and car tires, among other fomites, also play a pivotal role in the spread of FMD virus. FMD remains a very trade-sensitive disease, and countries that do not have the disease will likely not buy animals, milk, and meat products from East African countries where FMD is endemic, despite the availability of several OIE trade facilitating standards which allow to trade safely even from infected countries. Think of the standards on compartmentalization, commodity-based trade, and so-called non-geographical standards. In 2012, the Global FMD Control Strategy was developed and launched for implementation by all countries where FMD is endemic. The strategy comprises three components. 1. Improve global FMD control. 2. Strengthen veterinary services. That includes continuing professional education. And 3. Control of other transboundary animal diseases. online training reaches out to larger groups of participants at the convenience of their offices, as opposed to centralized training that is extremely expensive and takes away personnel from their workstations. I wish to thank Dr. Monique Elwa, Director General OIE, and the FAO FMD Technical Working Group, all staff at the EU FMD, and the Eastern Africa OIE delegates for their support to the planned OIE online training. The training module will also go a long way in implementing the progressive control pathway for foot and mouth disease in the East African region as per the global FMD control strategy. Thank you once again for the passion to learn new techniques and skills in the investigation of FMD outbreaks.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. We are going to introduce to you the UFMD. UFMD is the European Commission for the Control of Foot and Mouth Disease, and UFMD is the one that has designed this course, and we are welcoming you to this course named Foot and Mouth Disease Investigation Training Course for East Africa, or in short, FITSI-EA. This is the first FITSI-EA designed for the professionals from 12 East African countries. The course covers different themes, going from field investigation and sample collection, and including biosecurity, vaccines and vaccination, lesion aging, among many others. As you can see on your right side of the presentation, we have different modules that will be covered during this course. This course has been organized following the recommendations of the third GF TADS roadmap meeting for East Africa held in Entebbe in July. The course is open for practitioners from Burundi, DRC, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Somalia, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda. The European Commission is based in the FAO in Rome, and it has 39 member states. Here on the right, you can see some of the team members of the UFMD. And on the map below are the countries that are members of the UFMD. The main role of UFMD is to coordinate the activities of member states in controlling and preventing FMD. UFMD is built on 3 pillars, and we call them Pillar 1, Pillar 2, and Pillar 3. The Pillar 1 is to improve the readiness for FMD crisis management, and Pillar 2 is to reduce the neighborhood risk. Pillar 3 is to promote global control, like this activity of that is targeting East Africa. So among the technical support provided by UFMD is the development of training programs, including training materials and e-learning. Here is an overview of some of the courses offered by UFMD online team. Some courses are designed for FMD-free countries, and other courses are designed for countries that are not free from FMD. For the courses that are designed for the countries that are not free from FMD, like the East African countries, we have the introduction to the progress control pathway, which is a program that is being that is being organized by the OIE and FAO, and we have also the introductory epidemiology. Among the networks, we have the Progressive Control Practitioners Network, and we also have a Francophone network that is targeting Francophone countries, French-speaking countries. So the tutored online training courses, we have the FMD investigation training course, which is this one that we are going to have for the following 4 weeks. We have also a course on social economics. We have a course on post-vaccination monitoring, and another one on risk analysis along the value chain. These are courses designed for countries not free from FMD. During this course, we will have different tutors, and I may introduce to you Dr. Keith Sampson, who is the Executive Secretary of the EFMD. I will be coordinating the course, and Dr. Theo Knight-Jones will be one of the tutors, Nick Lyons, who is going to present it. Also, it will be one of the tutors. Kees Van Manen will be also one of the tutors, and Melissa Mclaws, who is also here. And most importantly, we are going to be joined by a team of guest tutors from East Africa, who we thank for their contribution to the course. And we also thank the UFMD team who were behind the design of this course. Now I may give the floor to Nick to continue with presenting himself and welcoming you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Claude, and welcome to everyone. So my name is Nick Lyons, and I manage part of the work program at EUFMD, which aims to support the global strategy for FMD control. So welcome to the course. I hope that you enjoy it and you learn a lot. And I'd also like to thank the support we've had from the regional offices or sub-regional offices of FAO and OIE. And also the people at EUFMD who've worked quite hard, or very hard, in the background in getting this all ready. And also, of course, to the participants for signing up and taking part. It's good to see so many of you connected today. So I'm just going to go on now to give a little bit of a sort of background on the context of why we're doing this course, discussing a little bit about foot-and-mouth disease in East Africa. So in addition to my role at EUFMD, I'm also a research fellow at Pirbright, and I've done various research projects in the region on various different things. And through EUFMD as well, we do quite a lot of activities in East Africa through our real-time training courses. So we've got a reasonable amount of experience of work in the region. So this is all the background things that you will learn, if you don't know already, about the fact that foot-and-mouth disease is caused by a virus of 7 serotypes, and within each serotype there's lots of different strains. And the virus, it can be inactivated by heat and extremes of acid or alkaline conditions, but the virus can persist in the environment for several weeks, and also in animal products. And this virus, well, this is the sort of global geographical distribution. So you've got the green areas, which are free areas. So in Europe, we're free of foot-and-mouth disease. But the red areas here really coincide with where it's endemic. And of course, this includes East Africa. And East Africa, the sort of viral serotypes and lineages do tend to occur in pools. And so you've got like pool 1, for example, in this part of Asia, and then sort of southern Asia, you've got the pool 2. But what we say about East Africa is it's pool 4, and this has OA, SAT1, SAT2, and SAT3 serotypes present. So one of the things just to say about the sort of the prevalence or the incidence of the different serotypes is that SAT3, which is sort of sporadically been reported, and actually in East Africa has only been reported in Uganda, isolated from African buffaloes in 1970 and 1997. This is based on world reports of the World Reference Laboratory in Pirbright. But also there was a more recent report of subclinical infection in cattle, which is unusual. So SAP3 is not the sort of certainly not one of the main problems when it comes to foot and mouth disease in the region. And actually, most serotypes are caused by serotype O, followed by A and SAT2. It's worth saying as well that serotype C has not been seen since 2004 in Kenya. That was the last report globally, and there's a possibility that serotype C is not actually circulating in the field anymore. But that's another debate. So now we just have a question for you. So the webinars and in fact the whole training course is interactive in lots of different ways. So we're just going to ask you a question now. When did you last send a sample, you personally last send a sample from a suspected case of foot and mouth disease to a laboratory? So I can answer this question because I would have done it within the last year. So I'm going to select that. So we've got different options: the last month, the last year, the last 5 years, never, or you can choose not to vote. That's your choice. Okay, so we've had quite a few responses in. It looks like we've got about, what's that, 40% now that are saying that that they've never done that. I mean, it might not be necessarily your job, to be fair. So, but then we've had quite a few people saying in the last year, and a couple more recent than that. So that's good. So it's good that we've got people that have got experience already in the field and have taken samples, and that's a good start. And for those that have never done it, then maybe after this course you will be suitably motivated to do so, of course, if it's part of your job. So going on to the next slide, in terms of these different viruses in East Africa, there's even though that the World Reference Laboratory for the mouth disease will test 50 samples per country per year for free, and there is support for sample shipments as well, only 4 countries from East Africa have submitted samples in the last 12 months. But we know that virus does circulate in many more countries than that. But also, when these samples are submitted to the Pirbright Institute, which is where the World Reference Laboratory is, there are still problems with sample quality. So quite a lot of the samples that are submitted, no virus could be detected, and that's a real shame when that happens, because a lot of money goes into doing the testing and to sending the samples. So we really want to make sure the samples that are taken are very good quality, so we can get the best results. But there is a real need to maintain surveillance in the region so that we understand what serotypes are present, and also the strains or lineages of the virus. And this is important for 2 reasons. One is to inform vaccine selection and to understand how appropriate the vaccine strains are for the viruses that are circulating in the field, but also to increase our understanding on regional FMD epidemiology. So what we hope is that one of the major things that you'll get from doing this course is the feeling of being confident in taking samples and submitting them to a laboratory. So why should we control FMD? Why is it important? And really, this can be broken down into, this can be looked at, well, from an economic perspective. Well, we know about the production losses, so these are your direct impacts, like reduced milk yield, growth rates, even impact on fertility, loss of draft power, increased culling, and also you get occasional deaths. People often say in young stock, but it's not uncommon to see it in adults as well. So there's quite a lot of direct losses, and in terms of our reaction as well. So these are indirect losses. This is all about, well, how do we react when there's an outbreak? And of course, we will give antibiotics. We might use vaccines, and there can be trade restrictions, which can be national and within the country, or indeed international. And these can amount to a huge cost. But of course, there's these wider impacts as well, wider social impacts, and also impacts on food security when it affects how much the nutrition of farmers or people in farming communities, or even on a wider scale, this can be a real concern. So actually, the estimates we have, I mean, there's not a huge amount of data collected from the field on these things, but the estimate we have is the annual global impact in terms of production losses and vaccination costs is somewhere between 6.5 and 21 billion US dollars a year. So you can see that the cost is really quite huge, but also this variability is because actually we're not sure a lot of the time about these losses. So in terms of the challenges in the region for FMD control, well, I told you earlier that there's quite a lot of different serotypes present and a lot of variation within these serotypes, and that's a particular problem in East Africa. Other regions, you might just have one dominant serotype and it makes life a bit easier, but in East Africa you have 4 that are common, so that's a problem. There's also, you know, a lot of people, it's not necessarily national governments, but often people in the field lack motivation to control FMD. This can be the farmers as well, and this might be just due to the fact that there's costs involved to do it, but there might be other reasons as well why they lack motivation. Also, there's a lot of livestock movements. We know this is very common with pastoralists being very active in the region, and also there's a possible role of wildlife as well. And of course, we know there's a lot of wildlife in East Africa. So, and also, of course, like I said before, it can cost a lot to control the disease. And also, just to make the point of, you know, vaccines we know are used a lot for the mouth disease. But one of the challenges that there is, particularly in East Africa, but also in other parts of the world, is about availability of vaccines. Can farmers actually have access? Do the government veterinary services have access? What the cost of these, that can really impact how they're used, and also are they effective? You know, we know that sometimes vaccines are not effective, and why is that? And of course, this can affect the motivation to control the disease if the vaccines are perceived as not working. So this we kind of group as something called vaccine security, and that's something else that you'd be thinking more about during this course. So really, this map here, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but this is just to make the point about the huge number of animal movements that are taking place throughout the region, and also with other regions as well. And East Africa has a lot of livestock. They travel quite large distances into the Middle East, into North Africa, and so it's an important region when it comes to FMD control and epidemiology. So finally, I just want to make the point of the progressive control pathway, which some of you may not have heard of. So what the progressive control pathway is, or the PCP for short, is it's a tool that is used by the OIE and FAO, and also EU FMD, we're based at FAO, to assist countries in FMD control. So this is very much an outcome-oriented approach. It's not like a prescriptive, you must do this, you must do that. And this is to help countries, and this has been used for nearly 10 years now, around 10 years, with quite a lot of success depending on the region you look in, and but it's really helped countries progressing with their foot-and-mouth disease control, and it integrates the sort of the OIE-free status in the higher stages, as you can see towards the top of this. So one of the things that we do as part of the progressive control pathway is regional roadmap meetings. So in each region, we'll have a meeting where countries discuss the progress that they've made and challenges with FMD control. And we recently had one in East Africa. This was in July in Entebbe. And this is I thought it was good to show you where the sort of region is when it comes to disease control. So to put it very briefly, let me go back to this slide just a second. So in these early stages, in stage 0, particularly stage 1, it's about understanding the FMD situation and understanding the risks. In stage 2, it's about implementing a risk-based strategic plan to reduce the impact of the disease. Stage 3 is about reducing the circulation of the virus. And then stage 4 is about kind of eliminating virus circulation and then having a free status and an application to become OIE free. So the stages that are most relevant to East Africa really are stage 0 is not that common, but that's when we really know very little about what's going on. Stage 1 is about understanding what's going on. Stage 2 is actually implementing a control plan. And when you look at what's happening in East Africa at the moment from the last meeting, you can see this is 2018, most countries are in stage 1, where we're still trying to understand what the disease situation is and trying to develop the control strategy. That's the whole point of the end of stage 1. And then you can see that a couple of countries are in stage 2, where they actually have a plan and they're implementing their plan. So I think that's all I have to say. I'll happily take any questions if anyone has any at this time. There'll be opportunities to ask questions at the end, so there's no pressure. Just give it.
Nick, how are you doing? Hello, everybody.
A couple of people typing.
Oh,
See, I'll just
you have a question, Nick.
For those questions to come through.
Oh, I'll read it for you. Oh, here we go. There was a different question that I saw. The first one here is about the stages. What are the prerequisites to attain the OIE FMD free status? That's a good question.
I actually cannot see. I can't see the questions on my screen. To be honest, yeah. Can you read it out to me? It's a good question, but also quite a big question. I mean, there's quite a lot of steps involved in getting an OIE free status, and actually, essentially, I mean, the whole point of, or the whole sort of objective, really, and what you have to do is prepare a lot of documentation to demonstrate that you are genuinely free. So it's all about generating evidence, and that could be, there's numerous ways that can be done. And it comes down to, a good understanding and or them having a good understanding of what surveillance is happening. So I mean, it's a complicated process, and actually this course is more aimed at the sort of lower stages of getting countries kind of more sort of PCP stage 1, stage 2 is really I think the main aim.
Just to add on that, Nick, if you don't mind.
But essentially, when you put together
and the criteria
are
all defined quite clearly in the OIE terrestrial code.
And then
there's a questionnaire in one of the first chapters of the code that outlines the exact points that you need to include in those dossiers to then submit for review by the code.
Of course.
You have another question, Nick, about are the wildlife bodies part of the implementation? And are you considering a multidisciplinary approach? I would guess that this is about the PCP.
Thanks. Well, I think that you would consider doing something about wildlife if you actually generated evidence that they were a problem. And actually in East Africa, I think that we're still not entirely sure how much of a problem that the wildlife really are. And actually the publications that have been produced, and this is something that will probably come up during this course is that the evidence really isn't there that there are major problems.
Yeah, no,
this is different in Southern Africa, where there is quite a lot of evidence.
You know, that it's like you said in your presentation, Nick,
so the
it's
PCP
not
is about all about
prescriptive,
being evidence-based.
but it
so
varies according to the risk that is
identified
identified in each country or each region.
Would
and
try
so
and come up with some
it certainly is multidisciplinary, and the disciplines that are included would depend on the risks in the particular region. And then there's a last question here about a laboratory in East Africa, and do we have an SOP?
Well, there's various FMD laboratories in East Africa, and actually we're going to hear, I think later in this webinar.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Nick. Let me see here. So, hello everybody, and I'm going to speak about outbreak investigation and why is outbreak investigation important. You can continue to write questions in the chat box if you like, and then at the end of the talk, we can go through the questions that you've written during the presentation, or you can write them at the end. It's up to you. And if you think of more questions to Nick, he can also, I think, reappear again. So I know some of you are having connection problems, and I'm sorry for that. I think that you'll be able to view the webinar again shortly afterwards in the recording, and we'll explain to you how to access that recording. So my name is Melissa Mclaws. I'm a veterinary epidemiologist, and I've been working for EUFMD since 2010. I was living in Italy, where EUFMD is based, for a number of years. But for the past 2 years, I've returned home to Canada, and I'm currently sitting in Ottawa, where it's very snowy outside and cold. And I work as a risk assessor in the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. But in my time with EUFMD, I have had the opportunity to work in free countries and in endemic countries on FMD control. And I'm very much looking forward to being a trainer in this course. So I'm going to start with a question for you. And please, we'll bring up the chat box again, or a little box where you can type answers to your questions. But if you think about outbreak investigation for foot and mouth disease, what is the purpose of it? Why would you take the time and the effort to go out to a case of foot and mouth disease, or what is suspected to be foot and mouth disease, and to control it? And you can please, I hope that you can hear me and see this, and you can type your answers in this box here. I don't see anybody typing. Please, there should be 74 participants. Okay, somebody's typing. For effective management planning. Yeah, this is a good point, that FMD control, as well as dealing with a particular outbreak, can help you plan for controlling other outbreaks. To know what serotypes are circulating, yes. So to to identify through samples what is the serotype. And now they're flooding in. To enable control, to reduce the impact, to understand the extent of the disease, to collect epidemiological data. Oh, there's a lot of answers coming in here now. To identify the source of the infection, identify the agent. Okay, so clearly there's multiple purposes for outbreak investigation, and I believe that you've identified most of them or all of the answers that I had thought about before. Somebody here in the chat box is saying data for risk analysis. So thank you very much for your answers. And unfortunately, it's hard to see all of them, but I'll go through and show you what I put down for this. So as some of you indicated in your answers, there's an immediate need for that particular case that you're visiting to, first of all, confirm that it actually is foot and mouth disease, because there can be other diseases that look similar to foot and mouth disease. And you really need to go out to see the animals and to take samples, to speak to the farmers to confirm that the cause of concern in the animals actually is foot and mouth disease. And then through interviewing the farmers, you can try to get an understanding of how the disease came onto their particular premises, to their farm or to their household, to identify where the disease came from and where it might be ongoing. And that's useful if you're in a situation where you're able to try to identify every case, because then you can use that information to check the farm that it might have come from and to see if they're infected, and also to determine if it's spread to other farms for the purpose of control. And then, as some of you said, of course, you have to visit the premises, confirm the disease is present if you're going to take any control measures to prevent further spread. But then, as well as these immediate actions that can be taken on farm, through doing multiple outbreak investigations or visiting a particular farm more than once, you have the opportunity to learn more about foot and mouth disease, about the epidemiology of foot and mouth disease in the particular region where you're working. Through visiting many outbreaks, you can learn about how the disease is spreading, what kind of impact is it having, and what are the risk factors. So what husbandry practices or features of the particular farms make them more likely to become infected than other farms. And by learning about those types of things, then you can start to plan your management and your control, and also to evaluate of the control measures that you're taking, what seems to be working and what's not working. So this can be, like some of you said in your answers, about checking that the vaccines that are being used or are available in your region are actually providing protection against the virus strains that are circulating. It can also be to make recommendations about improved biosecurity. If you find out that in a particular time of year there's more outbreaks, or for example, outbreaks might be associated with common grazing, you can give that information to the owners, to the livestock owners, to enable them, to empower them to try to protect their animals and their investments. And then all this, of course, also informs future control policy as well. So it's not really opportunity to learn, to check the assumptions that you're making, and to see that they're appropriate. So back to those immediate priorities. When you visit an outbreak investigation, here's 3 questions for you to keep in mind, and we'll go through this at some detail during the course. But when you go to a case farm, you want to try to identify how long has the virus been present for. You do that by examining multiple animals and checking the age of the lesions in their mouth, and we'll show you many pictures on how to do that. And then by interviewing the farmers and speaking to them, the livestock owners, about animal purchases, about movements of equipment, about visitors that they've had, you can try to identify where the virus came from. And similarly, with the same set of questions, you can also identify where it might have spread to. And this can be particularly important, of course, for neighboring farms that are very close by. But sometimes you might identify very long distance movements. And this is how different virus strains can move between longer distances within a country or between countries, so transboundary animal spread, or even between regions. So these are important questions to ask. And one of the tools that we'll show you in the course is to construct a timeline. And this informs you about the particular dates when the movements or when the different opportunities for the introduction of foot-and-mouth disease, which we call the source window, or the spread window, which is when it might have left the premises to identify or to infect other premises. So you can see here, for example, if you're visiting a premises on the 31st of August, you can, through interviewing the farmer, you can understand that they first noticed the clinical signs a few days ago. So it took them 5 days, 4 or 5 days, in order to call the veterinarian to come out and to check their farms. And then by looking at the lesions in the mouth, you can further identify when the infection was most likely to have started on the premises, or the incubation period. Then you see you're going back for a number of days, almost 14 days is the incubation period, when you can see that the disease might have come on any time in this time. So although that incubation period is quite wide, it's usually just between 1 and 4 days. So that's why we go back 4 days from the start of the clinical signs. And then using that, you can identify this here is the source window during which the infection might have been introduced. And this here is the spread window from when it can be transmitted onward from that farm. So when you go onto that farm, you're going to want to ask the farmer about everything that happened between the 13th of August all the way up until the date of visit in September. And I realize that this might not have been very easy to follow, but you'll be able to study this in some detail during the course. And through that, you can imagine it's quite a large time window, and you can identify many contacts. And so you'll need to identify which are the most important contacts that you might want to follow up, because you can't follow up all of them. In every situation, resources are limited. And so you need to choose which contacts are the most risky, the most important ones to follow up. So through this, I've been implying that foot-and-mouth disease can spread quite easily from one premises to another, and that's why we're doing this contact tracing. But I'd like to ask you to think about, why does foot-and-mouth disease spread so rapidly? So what are the characteristics of this virus that enable it to be so infectious and so contagious? Because when you think about foot-and-mouth disease as a veterinarian, you can realize that it really is one of the most infectious animal diseases. And in this poll, in this quiz, you should be able to select more than one answer, because more than one of these actually applies. So just take a minute and read through wide host range, high morbidity, low mortality, shedding before clinical signs, low infective dose, so not a lot of virus required, subclinical infections, and that pigs shed very high quantity of virus. Okay, so that seems quite stable, and I'm very happy to see that that all of these answers were selected by more or less than you, by more or less of you, because all of these are reasons why foot-and-mouth disease can spread so rapidly. It has a wide host range, so it has many opportunities to spread within different populations. And small ruminants can infect cattle, can infect pigs, can infect wildlife. So that's an important feature. And although it makes many animals sick, it doesn't kill very many of them, typically. And therefore, they have an opportunity to interact with other animals and to continue to spread the virus. There can be virus shedding before clinical signs. So this makes quarantine and some biosecurity measures you can take more difficult if there's no indication that the animals are sick. And infected animals shed a tremendous amount of virus, but only a very, very small amount of virus is required in order to cause infection. So this is an important feature. There's a very low infective dose. The subclinical infections in sheep are important for similar reasons as the shedding before clinical signs. So sheep can become infected, also goats, and move around with no indication, no outward indication, no clinical signs that they're actually infected. So farmers, livestock owners might go to a market, purchase a sheep with no sign that it's actually infected with foot-and-mouth disease, and they bring it home, and then it can infect other animals, including cattle, in their region, in their home. And finally, pigs shed very, very high quantities of virus. And so if there's a group of pigs, they're prone to excrete large amounts of virus, which can then spread in some conditions in the air and actually infect neighboring animals close by quite easily. Okay, so thank you very much. We can close that poll. This slide here says the same thing that we've already gone through, although with nicer pictures. And so I think this is my last slide. So it's just a reminder that as we've gone through, foot-and-mouth disease is very contagious, and as well as movement of animals and equipment, that veterinarians going from farm to farm are also a risk for spread. And so we hope that in this course you'll gain an understanding of the virus and also about biosecurity and what measures you can take to make sure that that you're not contributing to the spread of the disease, and also to teach others about how they can protect their animals in their communities. And this is a summary slide. So in conclusion, foot-and-mouth disease outbreak investigation can achieve many different things. On the immediate premises, you can sample to make sure that it actually is foot-and-mouth disease that you're seeing, and to understand what is the serotype or strain responsible. Through interviewing the farmer and checking records and investigating the length of time, you can understand where the outbreak came from and spread. You can use the opportunity to implement control measures to mitigate impact of further disease on that premises and in that community. And then putting multiple outbreaks together, you can learn more about the disease, what is its impact, what's causing it, and you can check that your assumptions, your current understanding of the disease is actually true in terms of what are the serotypes, strains, how is it spreading. So, and again, this is just to point out that some things are happening at the first investigation and others might require multiple visits to multiple outbreaks. So thank you very much for listening. and we have another opportunity here for some questions. I'm just reading Jane saying that I'm more audible. I'm glad for that. So maybe, can we move the chat box back into the center, please, Alessandra? And because I think I saw some questions. Do we know the exact serotypes involved in our animals in the East Africa block? That's something that that Nick covered. Nick, can you come back? Or Festo, we do know the serotypes involved in the animals in East Africa, but I'm afraid that that I don't have that information right at the top of my head right now. I believe it's OA SAT1 and SAT2, but it with the SAT viruses, I'm not completely sure. Is it possible to control animal movements in countries like Ethiopia? Well, it's certainly challenging to control animal movements, but I believe that there are measures that can be taken, at least to reduce the risk through animal movements. For example, encouraging farmers to vaccinate their animals prior to movements in order to make movements safe. If you're in to educate farmers to ensure that animals that they bring into their herd, so that have been moved from another herd, to make sure that they look for healthy animals, preferably that have been vaccinated. So you can, through education, you can reduce or create motivation for farmers to protect themselves, I think. Oh, there's Nick. Most of the farmers don't keep records, and this can be an obstacle in investigating FMD. Certainly, that's definitely a case. I mean, foot and mouth disease, although there can be a fairly large window compared to some other diseases, the incubation period is relatively short. So the time frame that we're investigating is usually within the memory of the farmer, at least for important things like producing or purchasing new animals and bringing into their herds. They'll often remember that within a 2 or 3 week time period. But I do appreciate that there can be challenges with records. Why, when one cattle got a disease, I'm sorry, Dr. Kuwa, I don't quite understand this question. I'm not going to go back to the previous slide, might be on the outbreak investigation. We can bring that back. And the different serotypes, which one is very pathogenic to sheep? To my knowledge, there's not a particular serotype that's more pathogenic to sheep than others. Nick,
yeah,
if
I think
have
you just answered
more
the
information
question.
on that, you can.
It's
I know
about
that
strains rather than serotypes, I think.
that are more
so there's certain lineages or strains within a serotype that sometimes are associated with higher pathogenicity.
Nick?
But yeah, but you wouldn't necessarily say, this serotype's worse in sheep than another one. So it's more about strains rather than serotypes, I think.
Okay, so within each serotype there can be multiple strains, and then so there are different levels of specificity when we're talking about the viruses. And then Jean-Claude very kindly answered the question that I should have been able to answer but didn't.
2004. So yeah,
we
so
have OAC Sat 1 and Sat 2.
So,
but like
a long
Nick
time,
said,
and
C has not been seen
like
for,
I said,
is it 20 years,
before,
Nick? For a very long time.
People are talking about, well, are we actually free of serotype C? And it's possible, but whether we go to the effort of proving that or not, I think is more of a debate. Yeah, in wildlife, and it probably still is there in wildlife. And it's just how important is it to,
I guess, has been identified in wildlife,
causing disease in livestock,
a very long time ago.
And it's never been shown to be important in East Africa. So.
Okay. Question about coordinating vaccination in all East African countries to reduce FMD outbreaks. I mean, that would certainly be a desirable goal to work towards. But of course, vaccination is done usually either by the individual farmer or at the national level, and so that would require quite a lot of coordination, and hopefully through efforts like the Progressive Control Pathway and the roadmap meetings, that can be a goal to work towards.
Potentially quite an effective strategy.
Do you have any thoughts on that,
I think
Nick?
for a lot of places, there's just outbreaks all year round. Even in, it might be less. There might be fewer outbreaks in maybe in the wet seasons, but you still see disease. So how effective really is it going to be? I don't know. In some contexts, sure, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, the incubation period is generally the same for all serotypes, but it will vary more according to the level of challenge of the virus. So how much, what is the dose that the animal would be exposed to? I think that that's more important in terms of determining what the incubation period will be than the serotype per se. So if an animal is exposed to a very high dose of foot and mouth disease, then the incubation period will normally be shorter than if it's exposed to a smaller dose. And so there's many questions here. Do we have vaccines for all identified serotypes in East Africa? Yes, there are vaccines for all of the serotypes in East Africa. I think in terms of where they're available and where we can get them for Alfred here, that is very much dependent within the particular country and the licensing of the vaccines. And just a point in general about the course, and I think we're going to have to move on quite quickly to talk about the course because we're running out of time. But we will have a discussion forum during the course. So if we don't answer your questions in this talk or in enough depth, please don't worry, because we will have the opportunity to come back and explore in more detail, not just with Nick and I, but also with your colleagues in the region and with the other trainers that are on the course. So many questions about vaccination, which I think is great. Multivalent vaccines for serotypes circulating in East Africa. This I'm not sure about, if there's multivalent vaccines with those 4 particular serotypes. Yeah, and definitely, the need to include the different serotypes is is a consideration and can be a challenge because there is no cross protection between serotypes. And so again, it really depends on the particular situation in your region, keeping in mind that immunity is relatively short-lived for foot and mouth disease vaccine, and so there would be a need to repeat that vaccination, ideally every 6 months. So, shall we move on in the interest of time? And we can answer these questions all in the discussion forum, like I said, but it's really wonderful to see your interest and your participation, because that's how we're all going to learn in this course. And so now we have an introduction to the East African Regional Laboratory Network.
Welcome for online FMD laboratory diagnostic training. I am Daniel Rizal from National Animal Health Diagnostic and Investigation Center, NADID. NADID serves as a national referral laboratory for Ethiopia. NADID generates acceptable following mission. NADID generates acceptable laboratory diagnostic tests, result for certification of exports and imports of animals. It also undertakes outbreak investigation and active disease surveillance for staff where FMD is one of these diseases. It delivers national referral diagnostic service, build capacity technical of the regional state, veterinary laboratories in the country. Eastern Africa Regional Laboratory Network. This network helps the exchange of information and experiences about the FMD in East Africa countries to inform the epidemiological pattern and regional risks. It also promotes standardize and the equivalence of the laboratory tests for FMD. It also encourages the development of laboratory capacity to help or monitor the effectiveness of FMD vaccination programs, strengthening the functional linkage between professionals in Eastern Africa. It helps to improve the quality of FMD lab assays in Eastern Africa. It also helps to communicate activities towards the fulfillment of the progressive control pathway for FMD, PCV, FMD, it helps to understand the global and regional FMD virus circulation, research, and make recommendations on labs, vaccines, and FMD control. It also improves the control measures, which are mostly at early stage of implementation in the region. The capacity of all the regional laboratories for the diagnosis and the characterize the FMD virus varies widely in the region. I thank you for the EUFMD for sharing, for allowing us to share this, to participate on this training, and I thank you for OIFMD, and I also thank you all and enjoy the online FMD diagnostic training. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. This is me again. I'm going to introduce you the FMD investigation training course. This is the course that we are going to have for the next 4 weeks. And the purpose of this course is to equip trainees with the background knowledge that they need to diagnose and investigate FMD outbreaks, but also to understand the complexity of control options. The course consists of 7 interactive online modules, and the modules can be either visualized online, which is the best option because those are interactive modules, or if you don't have a good and constant internet connection, you can download the course or the modules and read them offline on your computers. The course also consists of 2 webinars. One of them is this one, which is the opening webinar. But at the end of the course, there will also be a closing webinar. The course also has a final assessment and further reading links. So we'll be sharing with you links or other documents that you may be reading for more information. The course will have the trainees will have support from experts of UFMD throughout the course. And there will be a discussion forum and a WhatsApp group. These are the platforms that will be sharing information and discussions and also questions and answers. So you may ask questions on these platforms, but take also your time to read what your colleagues have asked or posted, and you might put your comments as well. So we, as teachers, will also be asking some questions to you. And please don't be shy on responding or sharing your experience because we know that everyone has a different experience depending also on the environment they are working in. That's one of the good things of this course because it is grouping people from different countries. At the end of the course, you will have a final assessment, and those who will have passed the 7 modules and who have got a satisfactory mark on the final assessment will receive a certificate of attendance. But don't worry about the final assessment. It's not as complicated as you might think. I've gone through that, and I can testify to you that it's not a complicated exam. So for you to join the course, in a few hours you will receive an email with your username and the password and full details on how to get started. You can visit our website, which is eufmdlearning.works, and on our page that you can see here, the page that you will receive when visiting this link, you will have a menu where you can click on My Courses or the dashboard. And if you are facing problems in connecting or other problems, you can email us on ufmd-training@fao.org. So for those who will be facing problems with slow or intermittent internet connection, the WhatsApp group will be opening today for the participants in this course. And please, I say officially opening because some of us have started sharing information on it, but the official opening is supposed to be today. So please use this group to discuss matters related to the course contents and ask and answer questions with the tutors. Discussions will be relayed to and from the online forum. PDF versions of modules, course videos, and other resources will be sent by WhatsApp. But again, the best way of studying is to go through the online because the modules there are interactive and it's good for you to learn from there. So you will need to take the assessment on the e-learning page. And if you haven't yet sent us your phone number and would like to join the WhatsApp group, please send us your phone number on ufmd-training@fao.org. And if you don't wish to join the group, you may leave it yourself. So For those with slow internet, you will be able to download videos and content for offline viewing. And you can see here that you can either download the module or download a printable version of the course. But this printable version of the course, you will not be able to access the quiz or the self-assessment tests that are in the interactive course. The self-assessment courses are not marked, so it's for your own study. There is a separate discussion forum for each of the modules. Please use appropriate one. So on each module, we will be having a separate discussion forum. And please keep discussions in threads. You will be emailed every time somebody posts in the forum. And if you feel like you prefer not to receive these emails, you might unsubscribe by clicking the link in the forum.
So thank you very much to everybody for joining today. We've gone 10 minutes past what we expected, and so I think any further questions we will leave them for the forum. And I understand that many of you did have connection problems. However, you can view the recording, and you will have better sound in that recording. So I think we can draw this webinar to a close. Thanks very much to all of the presenters, to all of the participants for your good and active participation and many questions. Like Jean-Claude said, you will receive an email sometime today with the information about how to start going through the material in the course. And we will have another closing webinar in 4 weeks' time, where we can reflect on everything that we've learned and wrap up the course. So thanks very much to everybody, and have a wonderful evening. And I look forward to seeing you on the discussion forum. Goodbye.